Do you make your own bacon? Why not make your own bacon? You should totally make your own bacon. Bought bacon beats no bacon, but by far the best bacon is the bacon you're making. In this video, I'm making a Chinese Szechuan-inspired bacon, but I'll also cover off on how to make regular bacon, or how to customize your flavors to make whatever kind of bacon you like. Never tried curing your own meat before? That's fine, it's actually pretty straightforward. Let's get adventurous. Going to want to start with a nice piece of pork belly. I'm going to start by removing the skin. You can leave the skin on and remove it later in the process, but I find by removing it, it gives the curing mix more opportunities to get in contact with the actual meat, which cures the bacon faster. So I'm just using a very sharp knife and being extremely careful of my fingertips, and working from one corner, slicing under the skin, angling the knife slightly towards the skin to slice the skin away from the meat. Again, you're going to want to be very, very careful of where your fingertips are in relation to the knife blade at all times. Keep chipping away at it bit by bit, and eventually you'll have all the skin off. For the curing mix, you're going to need some pink salt number 1. This is sometimes referred to as Prague powder number 1. This is different to regular salt because it contains 6.25% sodium nitrite. This is what helps to cure the bacon without allowing any harmful bacteria to grow. Now, ordinarily, I'd avoid any ingredient that has the word poison written on it in large letters. That's a pretty good general rule of thumb for cookery. But in this case, we're using it in tiny quantities in the way that it's intended, so it's absolutely fine. But you do need to be very careful that you're measuring it correctly. This stuff is readily available online. Just make sure you're getting curing salt number 1, not curing salt number 2 or saltpeter. Next, we need to weigh the pork because we're going to be measuring our curing ingredients based on the weight of the meat. For the rest of the ingredients, you're going to want to use a small, very accurate set of scales. Say hello, Mr. Scales. Hello. The measurements for our curing mix are going to be based on 100% of the weight of the pork. We're going to want 2.5% salt, 1% sugar, and 0.25% pink salt number 1. So for my bacon, which weighs 1,065 grams, that means I'm going to need 10.65 grams of sugar, 26.63 grams of salt, and 2.6 grams of pink salt number 1. And then we're going to mix those thoroughly. So that's the curing mix taken care of. So now, onto the fun part, the flavors. Now this is where you can get really creative. Today I'm making a Chinese-inspired bacon, but a really good blend of flavors that I would use for a more regular style bacon for a piece of pork belly this size would be 2 bay leaves, 6 cloves of garlic, about a tablespoon of coarsely crushed black pepper, about a tablespoon of smoked paprika, and a whole bunch of fresh thyme, or about a tablespoon of dried thyme. But you can use really any kind of spices or flavorings that you think would be nice. Really good additions can be brown sugar, honey, or maple syrup in place of some of the sugar. Other spices like chili or mustard. Even ground coffee or instant coffee can add a really interesting flavor. That's right, you could be getting your morning buzz from caffeinated bacon. Instead of regular black pepper, I'm using Szechuan peppercorns. I've got probably a tablespoon and a half here that I've just lightly toasted in a saucepan, and I'm crushing them coarsely in a mortar and pestle. I'm then going to pop outside to grab a couple of fresh bay leaves. Dried bay leaves work just fine too. I'm then going to crush and roughly chop 6 to 7 cloves of garlic. I'm also chopping the bay leaf into small pieces. You don't have to be too precious with this. As long as it's hacked up into small bits, it'll be fine. I'm mixing the Szechuan peppercorns into my other dry ingredients. Then into a bowl with my garlic and bay leaf, half a tablespoon of dark soy sauce, a tablespoon of Chinese cooking wine, and because I don't own a smoker, I'm adding a tablespoon of liquid smoke. You may need to adjust this slightly as I find some brands of liquid smoke are stronger than others. You can do this next part in a tray or a container, but I find it a bit less messy to do it in a large snap-lock bag. Place the pork into the bag, make sure it all fits nice and evenly, then I'm taking the dry ingredients and sprinkling them over the surface of the pork. Try and get a nice even coverage if you can, because it's these ingredients that are going to cure the meat, so we don't want any spots left uncured. cured. Flip it over, do the same with the other side, and rub everything around to get the meat nicely coated. Then in with the wet ingredients and give everything a really nice massage to get all the ingredients combined and evenly covering the pork. To make this a little bit easier, I've closed the ziplock almost all the way to the end, and I'm flipping the pork over, folding the bag to squeeze out all of the air. Once the air's squeezed out, I'll seal the remaining end of the ziplock and massage everything in. That's it for now. We're going to put this in the fridge overnight, but do make a note of which side of the pork is facing up, because tomorrow night we're going to flip it so that it rests on the opposite side. The following night, I've grabbed this out of the fridge and we can see it's already starting to cure. You can see that the salts have pulled some more moisture out of it, and if you press on it, you'll find that most parts are significantly firmer. This is a great sign that the cure is doing its job. So next, we're going to give this another massage. Again, we're just trying to make sure that the cure and all of the flavoring ingredients get a chance to come in contact with all of the meat. So give it a good rub on all sides, try and move the ingredients around a bit, and then when you're finished, do the ziplock back up and make sure you put it back in the fridge the opposite way up to how you took it out. The amount of time needed to cure the meat can vary, but is mainly related to the size of the piece of meat. You're going to want to let this cure for at least 4 days. For larger pieces, about 1 day of curing per 500 grams of meat should be fine, up to about 8 days. So every day for this period, you're going to want to take it out of the fridge, give it a really good massage, and put it back down in the fridge the opposite way up. This can be a bit repetitive, but try and make it a bit of fun. Once it's had enough time to cure, you need to give it a rinse and a soak. I'd recommend clearing out the area around your sink just to make sure that you're not splashing any meat juices onto anything nearby. You want to really thoroughly rinse this to get all the little bits of garlic and spice and bay leaf off of the surface of the meat. They've done their job of imparting flavour, and now the last thing you want is a slice of bacon with a chewy lump of bay leaf stuck to the side of it. Once it's all clean, give it a little bit of a soak in cold water. Some people soak this for up to an hour. I usually leave it for about 15 minutes. If you've been curing it for a particularly long time, you might want to increase the amount of time that you soak it for to try and reduce the overall saltiness. But for most intents and purposes, I find 15 to 20 minutes is plenty. Once it's had a soak, take it out and put it on top of a wire rack over a baking sheet, and then put this in a fridge uncovered for around 6 hours or overnight. This causes all of the water on the surface of the meat to evaporate, and during this time the meat will develop a bit of a shiny skin on the outside, which is called a pellicle. The pellicle is particularly important if you're putting this in a smoker, because it's this layer that's going to absorb the most of that smoke flavour. And now it's time to bring the meat up to temperature. The best way to do this for flavour is in a smoker. Try and keep the smoker's temperature to about 110 degrees and smoke the meat until the internal temperature reaches 65. I don't have a smoker, so I'll be doing this in the oven. Because I don't have a smoker, I'm adding a little bit of extra smoky flavour by taking some slightly diluted liquid smoke and painting that over the outside of the meat prior to putting it in my oven. If you're doing this in a home oven, the same temperatures apply. Set the oven to 110 degrees Celsius, put the bacon in, and let the bacon cook until the internal temperature reaches 65 degrees. I'm then putting a temperature probe in my meat, making sure that the end of the probe sits in the middle of the thickest part of the meat. If you don't have a digital thermometer that can go in the oven, you can use a quick read thermometer like a thermopen. You can also try and do it by time, but this is a lot less accurate. I find that for a piece of meat this size, to get the center to 65 degrees, it takes around 70 to 90 minutes. Once it's come up to temp, take it out, let it cool for a bit, and then put it in the fridge to cool completely. And this is the result. Some delicious streaky bacon with some beautiful Chinese-inspired flavors. To be perfectly honest, I do actually prefer the standard bacon flavor mix that I referenced earlier in this video, but this is really nice for something different. The Szechuan peppercorns are lovely and floral, and the Chinese cooking wine adds a really beautiful complexity. Homemade bacon, part of this complete breakfast. If you'd like to learn how to make this complete breakfast, including light and crispy homemade crumpets, click the link on the left at the end of the video. Until next time, happy snacking! Bought bacon beats no bacon, but by far the best bacon is the bacon you're making. Bacon, 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 bacon.